Officer Wilson said that he had a clear conscience about what happened that day. If he had to do it again, he would. What's your response to that?
He's a murderer. That's what that tells me.
What does that tell you, Leslie?
I hope the Lord have mercy on his soul.
All right, folks, I bring up Ferguson because we have a guest who has written a great column, Top 7 Excuses Liberals Make for Ferguson's Riots. Joining us now is Gavin McInnes. He wrote it, columnist at Taki magazine and TruthRevolt, and regular on Fox News' Red Eye, and author of The Death of Cool, From Teenage Rebellion to the Hangover of Adulthood. Hey, Gavin, welcome back.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't believe where we are right now, but your piece, and it's so true, and Sunny Hostin, by the way, who was the interviewer in that session, that sit-down with the parents of Michael Brown, banned me from her Twitter account late last week because I pointed out to her, you don't perform CPR on someone who's breathing and has a pulse, and then I said, why don't you teach your kids to respect the cops? And I said that because she constantly says on TV, my kids are kids of color. What am I going to tell them? I'm afraid for their lives. So she got insulted that I dare bring it up, even though she brings it up on TV. So Sunny Hostin banned me from her Twitter. But let's talk about teenagers. You see all the young people, okay? Laying down and having die-ins or whatever they call them in Macy's, in the Apple store, walking through the streets. What's with them? Do they know what's going on here?
I think what people aren't understanding is Black America, especially adolescents, and white America could not be farther apart. You might as well be having a die-in for some Amish dude who fell into a scythe while they were cutting grass. I mean, these guys have a totally different view of America than these white middle-class college kids have, and they're pretending they're unified in this front. The black kids in Ferguson hate the establishment. They hate white people. There was a great interview with this dude, this Jewish guy named Ami, went in there and talked to black kids, and they were all saying white people are the devil. And they are furious. And I blame liberals to a certain extent for telling them and creating this ethos where there's no hope, there's no future for black kids. Basically, they're like Johnny Rotten in the punk days saying there's no future for you. And these guys end up with this terrible attitude. Now, the white middle-class kids, they're just playing. They're posing, and they don't really have, a justice agenda. There was a white girl who was just shot by a cop. They didn't care about him. Or what about the Asian dude, the Asian rookie here in New York who just shot a black kid? No one cares about that because it doesn't fit this college narrative.
Yeah, and one other example, there was a story out over the weekend that they had a protest in Ferguson on a university, actually it was, now that I think of it. I don't remember the college, and not in Ferguson, obviously, but around the area there, and they only wanted blacks to participate in the protest. They wouldn't let whites do it.
Yeah. It was segregation all over again. They had special fountains for the black protesters and the white protesters, and they were fighting for equality.
So let's talk about this. And again, Gavin, you're part of the media. Obviously, I'm part of the media, and I'm saying this till I'm blue in the face, so you might see my face really actually turning blue. Without the media pushing this false, dangerous narrative, and of course Obama and Holder are behind it all, and they're in favor of it. It couldn't exist, and you point out in your piece at TruthRevolt.org the 7 excuses that liberals make for the Ferguson riot, and they're all bogus. They're all nuts.
They're all way crazier than I thought they would be. I thought they would do broken window theory and say it'll be jobs to help build the place. They didn't even go near that. They said things like human life is worth $9 million, so if this saves 3 lives, it's a $27 million profit. Or they said that these places that burnt down were cathedrals of capitalism. Like the malt liquor place, the auto parts store, that's a cathedral of capitalism. It doesn't look like a cathedral to me. It looks like a crappy liquor store. But what I think is worth pointing out here is I wrote that article before Eric Garner.
Right.
And I really feel like with this whole police brutality thing, there's 2 worlds. There's pre-Garner and post-Garner. And the Garner thing was like, after years of screaming that everyone is wrong to talk about police brutality, we have this case that is not even close to as simple as Mike Brown. And I'm on the side of Garner when it comes to that kind of thing. Hannity got in a lot of trouble for saying, why are we caring about loose cigarettes? And I don't know why he got in so much trouble for that. He's right. It is a ridiculous law to enforce. It's not a Mike Brown case at all.
No, it's not a Mike Brown case. But first of all, if the police are going to arrest you, you don't stand there and make your case and say you're not going to touch me because it's loose cigarettes. And we'll continue. We're coming back with Gavin McInnes for part 2. I want him to hear a couple of sound bites and weigh in on them as well. We're coming back on the Steve Malzberg Show.
I feel that he was murdered unjustly. I don't even feel like it's a black and white thing, honestly. You know, in my opinion, I really don't feel like it's a black and white thing. I feel like it's just something that he continued to do, and the police knew. You know, they knew. It wasn't like it was a shock. They knew.
All right, that's the widow of Gavin McInnes, as we welcome you back. That's the widow of Eric Gardner, saying it was not a black and white thing, sitting next to Al Sharpton. I thought he was going to pass out, and saying that the police knew, and he knew the police knew, meaning selling the cigarettes. She said they used to call him, "Hey, Siggy." The point is, and we ended the last segment, you saying that, you know, they shouldn't be arrested for the loose cigarettes. The reason is twofold. There was a change of policy by the #1 cop in charge under the commissioner, who's African-American, who said they were getting tons of 311 calls from merchants who sell legitimate cigarettes, and when it reaches a certain point, they don't just give a summons, they arrest. They arrested this guy 30 times prior.
Yep.
So, I mean, you know, the guy, when you tell the cops you're not going to take me in, not this time, leave me alone, you know, I'm not going with you. I mean, she went on to say he had asthma, he couldn't work, he was lazy, he tried to get other jobs, but his asthma and his overweight prohibited him from working. So I'm sure the grand jury heard all of this stuff and took it into consideration.
Yes, look, what stands is that Mike Brown and Eric Garner are two different worlds. Mike Brown was charging at the cop. When you look at the trajectories of the bullet holes, you can see someone going like this. This was just a boring, stupid misdemeanor that got blown out of proportion. And New York is a total anarchy wasteland. I mean, Chinatown has fake handbags. It seems like all of Chinatown is illegitimate 24 hours a day. And these cops, yes, they get orders from up above, but there's laws like in New York right now, you can't walk if you have an ice cream cone in your back pocket, because that was used by horse thieves back in the 1800s. That law is still on the books, but cops don't have to enforce it. So they don't have to tackle a dude who's selling loose cigarettes. I'm not saying what they did was totally wrong. I'm not saying that Eric Gardner shouldn't have complied. He did the wrong thing. If you're getting hassled by the cops, you have to just go, oh, this is going to come up later. Just ride it out. Deal with it later.
Right.
But to sit there and think you're going to win against the cops is naive.
Absolutely.
But it is a totally different case.
No, absolutely, it's totally different. I couldn't agree with you more. I want you to hear something Melissa Harris Perry said, which just shows you seriously, Gavin, the real culture war that we are in. And because there's an MSNBC, and because there's a CNN, and because there's the networks that are willing to basically agree with her and let her speak, and let what's his name, the former Obama guy who talks about the cops all the time. I'm drawing a total blank. But you know, they bash the cops. Listen to what Melissa Harris Perry said.
That night, some in Ferguson committed acts of arson, vandalism, and theft. And by the next day, 12 commercial buildings in the city had been destroyed by fire. And let me also just point out that arson and looting, while illegal and not things that I support, and I think also counterproductive in many ways, are also not necessarily violent in that they are violence against property. And that does actually carry a legal difference, right? I mean, violence against property ought to be different than violence against bodies. Right.
I mean, certainly harming a human being is worse than burning down a building.
It should be, right?
Of course it's worse, but that doesn't take it. By the way, I'm talking about Mark Lamont Hill, for one. But this is outrageous.
It is bizarre, isn't it? Here's what you have to know about Melissa Harris Perry. She's white, okay? She grew up in a white household. And when you hear really militant blacks who sound like they're Malcolm X, they usually grew up in a white household. Most of the stars on BET, people accepting awards, Alicia Keys, all these people who won't shut up about blackness are actually white, educated white people who happen to have had a black dad somewhere down the line that they don't know, they've never met. That's what she's all about, and that's why she's so adamant about it. And we learned this when she was making fun of Mormons and Romney for having a black kid.
Right. Gavin,
got
to go. Gavin McInnes,
Okay.
great to talk to you. We'll see you next time. Don't go away, folks.